Welcome everybody to the Pandemic Response Reading Series. I'm so happy you could join us tonight, the first event of fall 2020. We have some exciting things coming up, which I will tell you about. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Lauren Carter, and I'm really happy that you're here. We are, of course, gathering from all over the country, maybe some people from the States, who knows. But before we begin formally, I'd like to just acknowledge where I and Natalie and Ariel and Matt are located, where we're situated, which is Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, and a place where I am very grateful to settle my most recent roots. I'm really grateful also for the opportunity to bring all of you together to celebrate this book. As we all know, it takes years of hard work to make books, and so it's really important to acknowledge them and to celebrate them. So thank you for coming tonight to celebrate the latest work by Ariel Gordon with drawings by Natalie Baird. And Ariel has also done so much to help this series out, including hosting a few events last spring, and I'm sure I will call on her again. I'm going to leave it up to Tanis in a few minutes to introduce Ariel, but I just want to say, as many of you might know, Ariel is not shy. And from my perspective, I am so very appreciative of her outgoing, exuberant nature, because she was my very first writing friend in Manitoba. And when I moved to Manitoba, I got this Facebook message from this crazy person in Winnipeg who just wanted to meet me. I was living up in the Paw at the time. And so through her, I have really, established a community, or been welcomed into the writing community here in Manitoba. And so I am so grateful for that. So I'm super happy to be able to have this venue to help her celebrate this latest book. So without further ado, before I introduce you to Tanis to guide you through this evening, so there is a little bit of ado, just let me remind you all to, if you have questions as the evening progresses, to pop them into the Q&A instead of the chat so that we can more easily find them later on. Yes, rather than the chat. We are also live streaming right now on my page on Facebook, so just so you know, if we refer to the chat, if you're watching on Facebook, you won't be able to see it, but we'll repeat the question so that you know. Okay, so Tanis, so happy that she's here. Tanis MacDonald is an essayist, poet, professor, reviewer, editor, and creative writing instructor. Her book, Out of Line, Daring to be an Artist Outside the Big City, published by Woolsack and Wynne in 2018, is a guide to playing the long game in the literary world. She is also the author of 4 books of poetry, the latest of which is Mobile, and she was a co-editor with Ariel and Rosanna Deerchild of Gush, Menstrual Manifestos for Our Times. Her recent work has appeared or is forthcoming in The Fiddlehead, Prairie Fire, Minola Review, Understory, Watch Your Head, The Goose, and Hamilton Arts and Letters, and in the anthologies Against Death and Far Villages. Tanis is a professor in the Department of English and Film Studies at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario, my father's alma mater, and she misses Winnipeg. Welcome, Tanis. Thank you. And I'm going to pop off and go get a glass of wine and sit back and watch.
Okay. Thanks very much, Lauren. It's true. I miss Winnipeg, and due to our pandemic restrictions, I didn't get to visit this summer. I saw some of you when I was there last December launching Mobile, and I just want to announce that Mobile has just been longlisted for the Toronto Book Awards, which was kind of a surprise to me. You know how, award seasons pass and your book isn't nominated, and then all of a sudden, a year after the book is published, there it is. So that's lovely and a great thing. So when Ariel asked me to host, I said, sure, and what do you want me to do? And it's Ariel, she's not shy. She told me exactly what she wanted me to do. So I'm going to read a poem of my own first about trees that Ariel has vetted as a kind of amuse-bouche, an appetizer to the main course of Ariel's Tree Talk. I also want to say before I read it that I currently live and work on the Haldimand Tract, which is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Arawandron peoples. And I gratefully live here as a visitor on this land. And I gratefully write about some of the things I see on this land. So this is a tree poem that I wrote for Ariel, I think under a circumstance during National Poetry Writing Month where she couldn't join our writing group, and she said she felt sad she couldn't be there. I think she was ill. And so I said, okay, that's it. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to ignore the official prompt and I'm going to write a tree poem for Ariel. This is called Ashland. When we viewed the house, we saw the trees. The seller winced in the backyard and sighed, I'm so embarrassed about these trees. But we didn't know much about trees, took her sigh and wince in buyer's stride. We smiled and shrugged and took the keys. So what was shameful about the trees? A maple, a tall ash, a bit grim with age, this house with lawn and trees. We didn't know much about the trees, but then the neighbors saw fit to trim back their cherry, branches fell, and we see more sky. That year, the ash stretched and breathed and grew 2 feet. That space for sunlight, the sure cure for its withering leaves. Not embarrassed, not even a wheeze or a cough, and we still don't know much, right? But we have this brick house, the two of us, and trees. That is my Ashland poem. And I will say that's also partly an elegy to the ash that we had to take down last year on our property. It was terrible to see the golden giant go. But I also want to say that one thing about writing a poem like that is certainly, it sprang in many ways from the many walks I'd taken through the Assiniboine forest and through some of the forest here around Waterloo, Ontario, where I live. With Ariel and how she has made me more aware of trees than I was before. I'm kind of a bird watcher and wildlife watcher person, but when I'm with Ariel, we look at mushrooms and we look at trees, and she's been instrumental in bringing my awareness of trees to light. So it is my honor now to introduce Tree Talk, introduce Ariel and Natalie Baird, who illustrated the Tree Talk. And I think Natalie is going to be doing some live drawing for us to show us a little bit of her process that she underwent when she was illustrating Tree Talk. I'm also going to ask her a little bit about that towards the end of the evening. But first, the two creators of Tree Talk, Ariel Gordon. And I would say to this audience, I bet Ariel needs no introduction, but you're gonna get one anyway, because that's how this works. Ariel Gordon is the Winnipeg-based author of 2 collections of urban nature poetry with Windsor's Palimpsest Press, both of which won the Lansdowne Prize for Poetry. She is the co-editor with myself and with Rosanna Deerchild of the anthology Gush, Menstrual Manifestos for Our Times, that had a huge launch in Winnipeg in 2018. I remember it fondly. Ariel just completed the 5th anniversary edition of Rites of Spring, a National Poetry Month project that is published in the Winnipeg Free Press in partnership with the Winnipeg International Writers Festival. Her most recent book before this one we're launching tonight is a collection of essays called Treed, Walking in Canada's Urban Forest, published by Wolsack and Wynne in 2019. And it was shortlisted for the Carol Shields Winnipeg Book Award at the Manitoba Book Awards, and it received an honorable mention for Alex 2020 Alana Bondar Memorial Book Prize for Environmental Humanities and Creative Writing. And the other creator and illustrator of the book is Natalie Baird, who is a visual artist, filmmaker, and community-based research based in Winnipeg. She completed a Bachelor of Environmental Science from the University of Manitoba in 2014, where she explored filmmaking as a tool for environmental action. Her documentary, animation, and video installation work has been screened and exhibited across Canada. She has an embedded community practice working as an arts facilitator and artist in residence in drop-in art centers and personal care homes. In 2016, Natalie returned to the University of Manitoba to do a Master of Environment, leading arts-based research projects about the social dimensions of climate change in Nunavut. And earlier today, Natalie told me that her thesis was accepted today, so she actually has graduated from the Master of Environment program at U of M, so congratulations to Natalie. All right, please welcome back to the camera to read to us from TreeTalk, Ariel Gordon and Natalie Baird's live drawing. Woo!
Thank you so much, Tanis. I think in terms of my community, you and Lauren are kind of key members. And so I couldn't think of any other way and means to launch this book if it wasn't, you know, with you. If it couldn't be in person, if you couldn't come up and touch my launch frock in person, I'm so glad that we got to do it this way and with you. I have a few more thank yous to do before we get going. The project had its genesis in a synonym art consultation residency at the Tallest Poppy, so I have to thank Synonym Art Consultation's Chloe Chafe and Andrew Eastman, the Tallest Poppy, Talia Siri, who not only has opened up her restaurant to these crazy residencies and to a lot of Synonym Art Consultation events, but also when it was plus 30 and I had been sitting outside for a whole day, she brought me an enormous tropical freezy, which literally saved me. Beyond that, I have so many thank yous and gratitude. That doesn't make sense. I have so much gratitude to At Bay Press, to Matthew Stevens and Matt Jodry, who designed and laid out the book, who accepted my crazy idea for a hardcover silver foiled thing. They have just been so amazing to work with. And if you have a book that you would like to be extra beautiful and have a publisher that will take great care of it, I really suggest At Bay Press, and you can blame me when you talk to them. I also am so reliant on Yvonne Blomer, who is one of my bestest friends. We met when we were both launching our collections with Palimpsest Press back in 2014, and she has been a sustaining force for me. I actually can't really imagine my life without her. So I'm so glad that she was willing to have a look, to take TreeTalk and shake it and see what fell out for me. Lisa Passold also had a look, and Lisa is so smart and so funny and beautiful. She looks like an anime character in all the best ways. And I think that everybody should be reading Lisa Passold all the time. So if you haven't read any Lisa Passold, you really should. Check her stuff out. But she also had a look, and she's so generous and funny, and yeah, Lisa Passold, best. Now, I edited this book at the Sage Hill Writing Experiences Spring Poetry Colloquium in 2018, which was one of the best experiences of my writing life. Yeah, I love Sage Hill. I've been there 3 times now, and this last time was the best. And I don't even think I'll ever match that experience. I felt like an artist all the time, and all I had to do was get up and keep on building the crazy poem on the wall that I'd started the day before, where I cut up the poem and glued it on the wall and rearranged it till it made sense. And in the group of people I was with, they thought that was perfectly normal behavior. And so that was pretty amazing. Okay, so now I'm gonna read, but first, so this is the finished product. This is the book, and you'll see it sort of looks like this. You know, there's a lot of space, there's a lot of short poems. So it sort of looks like this, and there are various rules about how things appear on the page. But this is actually what it looked like after I cut it down from the tree. So these are all the leaves, these are the poems, and the wind, as you go on, sort of turns it into this crazy wind macrame. So this is the poem. So my challenge was to take this and turn it into a manuscript. All right. So the main thing you need to know about this is that this is a public poetry project where I sat under a boulevard elm in Winnipeg's downtown on the patio of the tallest poppy, and I wrote and hung poems for 2 days, 8 hours straight. And I had everyone who was eating breakfast at the tallest poppy, who was walking by, who was in the neighborhood, I had them add their own thoughts and ideas and one-liners and meditations and haiku to the tree. So by the end of the weekend, we had 234 poems. 111 that I had written, just short, enough to fit on a strip of paper, and 107 written by passersby, and then 16 from field guides and other sources. So I'm just going to start at the beginning and read you, so this is an appropriate beginning to show you one of Natalie's illustrations. So I'm just going to start, I'm going to read you a section of it. And oh, one more thing you need to know. So when I'm reading one of the other voices that I included, I'm going to put my finger up. Everything else, when there's no finger, is me. All right. American elm, also known as white river water or soft elm, Ulmus americana. Saturday, July 29th, high/low, 29 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius. The horizon filled with crosses, strings of light, doors and windows. A dead elm down the street from this tree, this perch, telling time by the bus schedule, the number of yolks broken in the breakfast rush. The graceful, spreading crown of American elm makes this one of our most easily recognized trees, plants of the Western Boreal Forest and Aspen Parkland. How do you talk to a tree? With sentences as broad as a year, sudden storms of words, squirrels as punctuation? Old women with wheeled carts, young women with iced coffees, men with windows rolled down, the clink of ice in a glass, a motorcycle idling at the red light, his slow arc into traffic. A young Indigenous man is the first to approach. He circles the patio. Finally, he sits and stares at the tree. Spell thanks, he says, and waits. Spell mother. Spell earth. Dutch elm disease, or DED, caused by the wilt fungus Ceratocystis ulmi and spread by elm bark beetles, was introduced accidentally to North America around 1930 and was first recorded in Manitoba in 1975. Since then, many trees have died, plants of the Western boreal forest. The place where a bulldozer backed into it. The place where a chainsaw bit clumsily. Poems are made by losers like me, but only the city can plant a boulevard tree. Virgo supercluster, Milky Way, Orion arm, solar system, Earth, North America, Canada, Manitoba, Winnipeg, Wolseley, 103 Sherbrooke Street. Most cell phones unlocked. Wasps patrolling the middle distance. We buy gold. A truck honking across the street. The burning issues of today are the ashes of tomorrow, but a noble elm is a verity that does not change with time. Donald Culross Peaty, A Natural History of North American Trees. People approach. People circle, checking things out. They sit and stare at the tree, their pens hovering over the paper. Confess. I help people tie their snippets to the tree. The leaves sway above and below. The tree doesn't move. So many bare branches, such a full canopy. Dear tree, thanks for the shade, the leaves, and for keeping watch on us in all of our frailty, industry, doubt, and glory. I like to think about the things you must have seen. A penny whistle in a panhandler's beard, a gleaming marigold in a boulevard planter, shouting, elms and haze, the tip of a cane striking the ground. The invisibility of trees, battered furniture set out on the curb like it was the invisibility of trees, battered furniture set out on the curb like it was moving day. Stout pipe no one notices until it bursts. Thank you for giving us clean air. I'm sorry for what we are doing to you. I want us to be better. I am shaded, cooled. I am canopied, in good company. I am treed. One of our finest shade trees, widely used as an ornamental tree in cities and rural areas across much of Canada. Plants of the Western boreal forest. This poem can be summed up in 3 words: paper plus string plus tree. A bus huffs, hunched over its wheels. A duo of white women wait, moving in and out of the dappled light. What can you use elm wood for? Do elm trees grow fast? Is elm wood a hardwood? Where does the elm tree grow? People also ask. Google.com. This tree filters gleam. This tree at Sun Lover, a sweetie pie, a mouth breather. Dear tree, may you bring peace to this neighborhood. Sundresses, shredded fishnet stockings, Hawaiian shirts, cut-off shorts and slashed band t-shirts, aprons and earbuds. How do you contain a tree? I can't reach around all of them. How do you contain a tree? I can't reach all the way around, but I've tangle-footed a few lines to your trunk. I've belted you. All right, I'm going to stop there, but I have a second part. Tree got your tongue. Perry Grosshands, I'm ashamed of you. I have a second part to my presentation. So I don't know if any of you saw it, but I had said that I wanted to get people to add a poem, if they wanted, to my current Tree Talk, which is the boulevard elm in front of my house. I'm calling it the domestic pandemic Tree Talk. I felt, and so it's easy, it's just out my door. I'm not in public in the same way. I'm not having people add to it in the same way. So I'm really relying on you, audience, to add to the tree. So what I want you to do is to write your poem in the chat. You can also email me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable putting it in the chat, you can actually just email it to me. And that is my spam Gmail, just so you know. I'm not giving away anything that fancy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you that tree from it's video I shot today, and we're going to take 3 minutes to write our short poem. Just 3 lines, 3 or 4 lines, whatever you would like. All right, are we ready? I need a readiness, a ready sign. Okay. Yes, pen and paper. Find pen and paper. Okay, so I'm gonna share that now. Are we ready? Now this tree in the background is what we call the widowmaker. If you ever come to my house, don't park under that tree. All right, I'm gonna play it one more time. And you have 1 minute, 2 minutes now. And you can see the wind macrame there, which I kind of love. And this tree was planted on and about 1912 when my house was built, because that's how boulevarding worked. Every time houses were put in, they waited till the houses were in, and then every house got a stretch of boulevard and a boulevard tree, because then they could charge it to homeowners. All right, 3rd time is the charm. I'm drinking tea, don't look. I'm loving the poems that are being posted there. All right, so get your last thoughts down on paper. I know I've sent you away, and now I want you to come back, because Tanis has something to say to you. So are we all back? Oh, I love that. Look at that. I'm going to stop the sharing. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Tanis, can I bring you back? Are you ready? Are we ready there, out there in the chat? I need some indication that you're listening and that you're ready. There we go. Okay, so everyone's here, Tanis. We're ready for you.
All right, cool. I'm a little distracted by these awesome poems that are coming down. So I know I have other things I need to do as the host, but part of me just wants to read the poems. Okay. I'm back and I'm not distracted by your fab poems. Now we're going to have a little break where we'll hear from me and from Lauren, who also has a tree poem. And when Ariel asked me to read a tree poem, she also wanted me to read a fauna watch poem. I have an ongoing project where I observe who shares the space with me in terms of wild creatures. And if you're someone who bird watches or watches for animals in the vicinity where you live, it does get a little competitive sometimes, whether you have the best of intentions or not, right? And so when you see that someone else has seen, a moose because they live up north, or once Ariel told me and even showed me the photo of a fisher she saw in the Assiniboine forest, and I was filled with both awe and envy because I thought, why can't I see a fisher in the Assiniboine forest? Whenever she and I walk there, I see some wrens and nothing else, right? So after years of this, I finally wrote a poem I called Fauna Envy, which I'm going to read right now, and it's all about how my envy is fueled by my true happiness that my friends are seeing cool things, cool beings that we share our space with, but also I want to find them as well. So all of these are based on real things, real encounters with the natural world that other people have had. Fauna Envy. This Friday, I am envious of the woman who found an owl in her Christmas tree, of the man who is battling the courts for custody of his emotional support coyote. I wish I had taken that photo that captured a buck's antlers rising over the coulee like branches. I wish I had freed the fawn from the goalie net while her mother hovered and paced behind. Instead, the wild turkeys move smartly away from me in military fashion, a straight line through the bush. It's the end of the week, and I am rich in skittish chickadees and sparrows shoving each other off the feeder. On Saturday, I will squint upwards and wonder who that is. On Saturday, I will be more and less green. So, my Fauna Envy poem, and because Lauren's poem also involves trees, but I'm going to get her to introduce in what way it's different from some of what Ariel has been reading. So I'll turn it over to our host of the Pandemic Response Reading Series, Lauren Carter.
Thanks, Tanis. So an interesting invitation to read a poem about trees, because I realized I don't really have any. My last poetry collection is mostly about water, following sea, but there is one poem about cutting trees down, which I thought I mentioned it to Ariel and she said it was okay that I could read it. Because the first section of this book is about my settler ancestors creating a home for themselves on this land. So it's called Clearing the Land, 1856. Fire burns a warp of brush, scrub softened to dust to make fields between the weft of rock. Each day a new scratch, pink gash etched on forearm, face, scribbled like language, the symbols with which to knit a sock. They are trying to unweave this woodland, spin it into something new. What she remembers of the land back home, embroidered gardens, counted rows, an arithmetic of orchard trees. So thank you for the invitation, Ariel.
Thanks, Lauren. All the trees. Ariel's always asking people what their favorite tree is. And Ariel's posting arithmetic of orchard trees, holy shit, in the chat. Again, she's not shy. And because she's not shy, what we're going to do next is I'm going to invite Ariel and back onto the screen. And I've got a couple of questions I'm going to prime the Q&A with. And if you have a question that you want to ask Ariel about TreeTalk or about anything that she said tonight, please put it in the Q&A portion of the, oh, there's someone doing it already. That's awesome. I see the button light up. I feel like I'm hosting a call-in show. So awesome. Yes, please put your question in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And Lauren and I will pull up the questions and make sure that they get to Ariel and to Natalie. I've got a question for Natalie too about what it was like to illustrate this particular book. So Ariel, are you there? Are you going to come back so I can see you when I interview you?
Maybe. Natalie, you have to come back too.
Well, there she is. Now, Natalie is like a technical genius, and she's in two places at once, which is like so awesome. So we see her hand. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to start with asking you about TreeTalk as a long site-specific poem, and how you work the idea that it's very specific to you sitting on the patio of the tallest poppy, having people write for a specific tree on a specific corner in a specific neighborhood in Winnipeg. But it also has a kind of broad appeal, as we've seen with the remarks that we see in the chat. And I think this is a perennial poetic question about how to bridge specificity to a kind of much larger kind of concern. So can you begin with that?
Yeah. I really believe that the ideas of how to care for and how to be in relationship with urban nature, so the nature that is all around us in cities, is a really common one because so many of us live in cities, and elms are really common trees, even if there aren't that many left in North America. Winnipeg has the largest remaining collection of elms, but even still, I spent most of today watching a 130-year-old elm come down. It was the biggest, most beautiful elm in Wolseley, besides mine. And I found out a few weeks ago that it was coming down, and I was so sad. So I spent the day sitting on the ground, watching people maneuver with chainsaws and ropes and a bucket truck. And it was wonderful and sad. And so we're facing this time of great change in Winnipeg in particular, where the urban forest is changing at a really fast rate. But it'll be better. The next incarnation hopefully will be better, be more diverse. There'll be trees of all different ages. We just won't have that beautiful elm canopy. But I just want to note that elm canopy that I love, I love it, I'll admit it. It's a settler thing. It was the norm in every settled place. And that's what that means, that it was an installation by settlers, because it didn't exist that way. And so I'm sad to see it go, but I'm trying to be hopeful. But I mean, we're all trying to think about, how do we live in cities? How do we figure out a way to make cities livable? How do we survive climate change in cities? And some of the answers there are trees. Trees help us survive the city. They soften the edges of cities. And so I figured that if I wrote if I wrote about trees and cities, that I would be okay, that there'd be enough commonality that people would be able to sort of latch on and understand. But I also am such a proud Winnipeg poet. And a Winnipeg writer, and I'm gonna write about Winnipeg no matter what is actually smart or fashionable or useful. You know, like, I believe in this place, I'm from this place, and that's what I want to write. Yeah.
Cool.
So the other part of the site specificness is that I did something that was so site specific, that was so based on one place and one time and place, and now I'm launching it in this like anywhere of Zoom, which is interesting and weird, but that's why I did all those call outs in the chat. And I know that all of my friends are great for this, but I really wanted this to feel like an in-person thing, and that's why I was like, let's chat in the chat, like let's talk to each other, let's be human, let's be so happy that we can see each other's faces and hear each other's voices, even if it's just a small collection of us. I don't know. That's how I feel about that stuff.
Okay. A couple of people have written things in the Q&A that mirror what I was going to ask next. So I'll read theirs and mine. It's a big ball of a question addressing similar things. So Christine Fisher-Guy has written, were folks shy to write poems to the tree when you were on the patio, or could you hardly keep up with what people wrote? Carrie Ryan asked, did you use all the content contributed by Passersby? And if so, if you didn't, how did you choose to edit it? And I'll remind you of those because I'm going to put these all together. And finally, what I was going to ask about was really about the publicness of the process that you've outlined, as opposed to the intimacy of what many people wrote to the tree. Some of them were very personal and very clearly very intimate kinds of interactions. And I love the piece that you read with the young man saying, you know, spell thanks, spell mother, spell earth, right? So clearly there's a kind of intimate connection. So I'm interested in all of those ideas that, you know, how do people negotiate it? How, you know, what did you do with these kinds of intimate, with these intimate things that people wrote? And when it came down to editing it, how did you handle that kind of public versus private contribution?
Well, the thing that I've had 2 published collections so far, and I really like writing and editing, you know, those are some of my favorite activities. But once the book came out, you know, you do all this touring, you do all these things to try to bring attention to your work, and people, about half of people are like, oh, it's poetry, so I'm not going to read it, just right off the hop. Yeah. And I really like this idea too, that when touring, you convert people to poetry 1 poem at a time. So they hear you read a poem and they're like, that's poetry? I didn't think that was what poetry was. Or, you know, so I really like that conversion process. In that way, I'm a member of the poetry cult, and I'm rising up in the, what do they call that? The pyramid scheme of poetry, in that I've converted a fair number of people. But I also really love collaboration, and that's why I wanted to work with Natalie on this. But I also was like, well, what would it mean to involve people in the process, to have them realize that making poetry isn't this strange incantation that you have to study for 20 years to learn. It's, we can do this together, we can make things together. And so I figured if I combine the conversion process with the writing process, I could actually launch my book as we were writing it. I would have an audience for the work as I was making it, which seemed to me to be a really interesting way of making poetry, right? And, you know, people didn't actually need that much prodding. I didn't know how many people I'd actually get that wanted to participate. I was okay with none. But I was kind of shocked, you know, like everybody kind of was game. Maybe that just speaks to Winnipeg's arts community, or the environment that the Tallest Poppy has created, or the power of their chicken and waffles. It's hard to know. But yeah, I mean, I had 111, no, how many? I forget the number now. I have to check my own book, it's terrible. 107 people wrote things over 2 days, which is actually kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it's a lot.
And there was, I did not use everything. There was a fair amount of duplication in terms of some of the sentiments that were expressed. And so I tended to pick the best of each kind, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I didn't use everything, but I didn't use everything of mine too. I didn't want to be married to using everything. So that was part of the editing process, which was also ordering. I mean, it looks like this. What order do you make out of this?
That is a bit mad, that? I mean, it does look like a daunting task.
Yeah, so I transcribed it and then printed it out, cut it up, and then arranged it. And I wound up with this one, with this TreeTalk for a rough chronological. So it's in a kind of a chronological order. There's a rainfall that happens at one point. There's a sort of a beginning and an end to each day. Yeah. But I think the other TreeTalks are going to be less orderly in some ways. One of the editing or compositional strategies I've arranged at is that I'm going to order them in the order that, the order of the poem is going to be the order that they are transcribed. Which I think will be interesting. But yeah, so that's the challenge for going forward with this project. Okay.
Natalie, I warned you I was going to ask you a question, and your time is coming. It's here. And actually, I've got a great question from Sue Sorensen. And my question for Natalie was going to be, how did you choose what to draw? Because of course, this is a book that could have dozens and dozens and dozens of drawings in it, and you would have to make a choice about what's actually going to make it to the page. It's a delight to watch you draw live for this. And someone else wrote, it's very soothing to watch, and I hope you saw that comment. But Sue's question was that because there's so much space on the pages, Sue asks, what if I wanted to write or draw in that space? Natalie or Ariel, what would you say to that? So I'm gonna ask Natalie first to talk a little bit about her contributions, and also to think about other people drawing in the white space of the pages that Ariel has left.
Sue, I think that's excellent. I'm just going to take my headphones off because I'm hearing myself twice. Yeah, I think in terms of the process of picking what to include, when Ariel was doing the residency, I went and had breakfast and made a small contribution. I just drew some elm leaves. Yeah. Oh, great. Ariel is showing some more drawings. And before we had worked on this project together, we had been passing notebooks back and forth to each other. We would get together for an hour or two when I was studying at U of M and Ariel was working at U of M. And we would often just sit somewhere and then kind of observe what was happening in terms of the people or the environment, and make drawings and write, and then kind of trade back and forth. So I think that process of, similar to Ariel, but in terms of drawing, kind of looking and observing and seeing what's happening and making it very place-based. So in response to that, when Ariel asked me to make some illustrations, or I guess Matt was involved too in making that happen, so thanks, Matt. I first went back to that tree and was like, okay, so what's going on here? I think the context is important, like where it's located. It's very urban, kind of often like busy street that I spend a lot of time on, as it's a neighborhood I work in and also have gone to the Poppy for a long time. So it's familiar to me, but I wanted to spend some time there illustrating it. And then also the process, I think, to kind of also share, like Ariel was showing with the tags on the string, is what that looked like physically. So I think with the illustrations, we were trying to bring a visual element to the writing to kind of tell the larger picture also.
Good, thank you. We've got lots of questions about the genesis of Ariel's tree obsession, as Martine Friesen has put it. And the tree obsession, and I think I can fold in a few more questions to this. Brenda Austin-Smith also asks, have you recorded the sounds of the written leaves in the wind? Right, the belt, right? And that's a cool idea. And Leanne Fournier also asks about to know a little more about your connection to trees. So back to that genesis, or of course how the connection to trees has developed. Can you dive into that series of questions?
I can. I wanted to add. Oh God, I wanted to add one thing. And now, Sue's question about adding things to the book.
Oh yeah.
I would say yes. I would say yes. Add whatever you want, and then show me too, because I think it's like a circle of collaboration that keeps going, and I kind of love that. So obsession with trees. I have always been an urban nature person. I sort of train myself to notice things in the city, so I'm always looking up, and trying. I kind of have trained myself just to look at everything. I've trained myself to be a noticer, but trees in particular. So I started visiting Assiniboine Forest. I'm sure many of you have heard me burble about Assiniboine Forest, but I first started going there about 21 years ago, when my partner told me about it for the first time. And I found it I wanted to write about it, and I found it kind of overwhelming because the entirety of it, like this forest. And so how I figured out how to look at the forest and have it be in a size and shape that was manageable is I started to focus in on mushrooms. So I was taking photos of mushrooms, I was looking at them, I was hunting for them here and there. And that, through the lens of mushroom hunting, I was able to sort of look at the larger forest. And then that led me to sort of think about Assiniboine Forest and then Winnipeg's urban forest on the system level, right? On being able to think about it as a system or as a totality. And that really drove me from mushrooms up to the system level and then back down to just looking at trees all the time and noticing again how beautiful they are, how wonderful they are, how varied they are. And I mean, Winnipeg is lucky. I just realized, the stat that people gave is that Winnipeg has 8 million trees in its urban forest, which is every tree on public and private land within city limits. And they always said 8 million, and it was always a rough estimate, which is about 11 trees per Winnipegger, which I really love. And more if you include hydro poles, and more in December if you include Christmas trees, right? So like this fluctuating population of trees. But then I was reading an article last week about the urban forest, and it said we only had 3 million trees. And I'm like, oh, like, do those 5 million are like, I have to check this because it's very disconcerting to me, because that means that the 5 million trees that I've been counting in my head have just gone poof. So they're like ghost trees. They're like 5 million ghost trees that existed and now don't exist, or never existed and still don't exist. It kind of freaks me out, but I kind of love it too. So I wrote Treed, which is my book of essays, and TreeTalk at the same time. And so in some ways, Treed is the system level one, and TreeTalk is an individual tree. So I kind of think of them as companion pieces of weird conjoined twins. Yeah. Does that answer the obsession question? Do I need to talk more about my obsession?
I think you always need to talk more about that obsession, but that's something to chew on for now, for sure. Yeah. I have to say that I remember seeing you launch Treed in Hamilton, and when you cited the 8 million trees, you could see all the Hamiltonians go, no, we have more trees than that. And they were just a little offended that you were an interloper coming in and saying that your city on the prairie had more trees than them. And yeah, Yeah,
Well,
it was a good moment.
yeah, I think Hamilton felt very threatened by Winnipeg in that. So I tried to be like, but we're cities. We're very similar. You know, I think it worked. I mean, I didn't get like ran out of town, but Coots Paradise in Hamilton. Oh, just outside.
It's amazing, eh? Yeah.
Oh, I love Hamilton. Actually, go to Hamilton if you haven't been. They have so many waterfalls and trails and Coots Paradise, and then the botanical gardens. Oh, it's so beautiful there. So beautiful here, but it's also good there. There, see, I did it. I fixed the Hamilton problem again.
Yeah, because I had to bring it up, right? Okay, I've got a question here from Yvonne Blomer, who says, and Yvonne's in my head because I like this part too. She says that she loves the parts where you say confess in block letters. I love the confess parts. Can Ariel talk about those? I was interested too, because I was wondering how to read that. I thought, is that you sitting on the patio saying, just write it, just confess? Or was it something that was going on in your head that you were like urging people to get their thoughts down on paper? So yeah, can you say more about how that emerged?
I actually use that as a bit of a prompt if people were having trouble, because some people would sit down and then they'd be like, I don't know what to write. And so I told people, like, it's anonymous. Just confess a secret, tell the tree something. Like, the tree can hold the weight of all of this human experience and emotion. Like, the tree is a good place to put secrets if you've got one. And one teacher used the platform to complain about the education system, and then commented on the fact that why do you think I'm writing this anonymously in a tree poem? Which I thought, so there were actually quite a number of confessions, and I didn't make them up. Like, I when I put them in the poem, I put secret : to sort of, to sort of mark them out a bit, because people didn't write secret, but it was clear that they were confessions. And, I guess I emphasized the confessions that had happened, if that makes sense. And then I had one or two confessions myself, but there is a danger to that. And I kind of ran into that on the 4th TreeTalk I did, which we did on a university campus, and someone confessed that they were feeling suicidal. And so that was, like, it took it beyond playful. And I appreciated the trust and the intimacy there, but then I had to also, figure out what could be done, what should be done, and certainly didn't include that. It wasn't included in the final poem. So there's, I guess, with everything, it's a good prompt, and I think it helped to bring people in. It helped to make people feel comfortable if they weren't natural writers. Yeah.
Cool. I'm just checking the Q&A, and I'll urge people, I think we're getting to the end of our questions, so if you have a burning question, please do put it in the Q&A, and I'll pick it up and pass it to Ariel. I've got a question. So go ahead.
If people want to get in a final few heckles, I mean.
That's true. Heckling time is also running short, so, the pressure's on. So I have a question here from Ashlyn Hagland, pardon me. She asks, can you speak to the tactile experience of the contribution, the choice of the paper people wrote on, how they use the space on that slip in their writing, and did they talk to you about this physical act of gifting? And lastly, did anyone else add images besides Natalie? So all about how people use the paper and used you as a resource to discuss what they were going to put on the paper.
Yeah, I wanted to have something that looked like, if you blurred your eyes, looked like a leaf. I guess if you were playing Minecraft, it looks like a leaf. It's that square, utilitarian khaki color. And I really wanted to not use good paper. I wanted to use something recycled. And so when I went to Arts Junction, which is this great recycling depot for everything. So businesses and homeowners donate stuff and artists take away what they can use, and it's diverting all kinds of weird stuff from the landfill. And so I was looking around there trying to figure out what I could use, and then I saw this giant pile of old green used file folders. And I was like, okay, these I can work with. And I just cut them up and then use them. So if they get ruined, you know, like if they get wet, they have like a little bit of a coating on them, like on the outside of them, but not much. So this one got wet and you can sort of see what happened. And this one is a drawing, but it's not actually a relevant drawing. This, I have to admit, this is the folk festival one, because the one for TreeTalk is all untied. Like for this one is all untied and in a box downstairs. And I was like, I should tie it all back together. And then I got tired and put on my dress instead. So, we had someone else come. I invited all the artists I knew to come down that weekend in July 2017. And so I had someone else come paint a picture of the tree in watercolors, which was great. But yeah, and then I had a group of poets. I taught a workshop at the very end when I was feeling most fresh and most open and creative. At the very end of the 2 days, I felt like a melted candle. But I got a group of poets to come and we did a writing workshop around the tree. And so that was pretty great. I think several people that were in the workshop are here. So that was really great. But yeah, so the question, the gift, the presentation, yeah, I mostly tried to be as open and as possible and sort of accept people as they came, like as they came to the table, as they sort of wandered around, sort of tried to welcome them and not just be like open. It was like the experience that's most similar to it is, you know, when you go to a bookstore and you do a signing for 3 hours, and if you just keep your head down, no one comes up to the table. No one wants to get a book signed. You actually have to like look people in the eye and be present for them, right? And so that was part of sitting there for 2 days. Yeah.
Cool.
Question? I can't even remember the question.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did, and then you riffed on it some more. Now we're the last question is actually for Natalie. People are kind of jonesing to see a closer view of what you've been drawing. Well, it's exciting to watch you create it, and I know there's some cheering on the chat that wants you to use the yellow. See Christine Fisher, guys, use the yellow, use the yellow.
Yeah, I want you to use yellow.
This request originated in the chat from Joanne Epp, who wants to see those live drawings held a little closer to the camera. So can you pick them up and get them more into our site?
I can oblige.
Okay.
I drew the tree outside my window, which is something I've been doing for a few years now, but especially since we've been home a lot more. So I think it's actually, I don't know what kind, maybe Manitoba maple, a really old one.
When I go next, I'll tell you what kind of tree it is.
Okay. And then, so that one I did with ink wash, which is often how I work. And then these ones, just from the chat, I did a little Manitoba maple bookmark, and then a very eaten elm leaf.
Oh,
and this is some aspen leaves, but it's kind of in progress. So yeah. Thanks for asking.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Matt says, lovely halftones. See, use technical
That's the right term.
I think people would also like those bookmarks too. So, you know, Matt should take that into account as well. Bookmarks that go with TreeTalk, right?
Okay. And speaking of which, if people purchase the book through At Bay Press and they'd like me to sign them, because At Bay Press is in Winnipeg, I can do that. So when you order, just let Matt know that you want it signed, and I'll sign them to you if you want. Oh, and if anyone has any questions for Matt at Bay Press, he is here, and we can force him to come on camera and answer questions.
You know what? I've got one more question here that just came in, and it's from someone I know. So it's from actually one of my students. Moira Slater asked, I'm a new to poetry person, and could you talk about why poetry for this? What is it about this medium that it makes it the right medium for this project right now? And what makes poetry the right language? That's the end of Moira's question, but what I would add to this is you just wrote a series of essays about trees. What's different about writing the poems about trees? So that feeds into Moira's question about why poetry right now for this project.
Yeah, so when I started, when I did Treed, which was essays, it was the first time I'd ever worked in long form prose. And I wanted to do that because I needed a bigger canvas to write about things like climate change and the history of planting trees in Winnipeg and foraging and all kinds of business, right? Like I needed about 5,000 words to discuss that. And I knew that I could describe some of the things, some of those ideas in poems, but that it wouldn't, I needed something bigger. But this single tree fits so wonderfully on a little card, right? And the compression and just the lack of space on a card, on these cards, forces you to like, I don't know, like, and I did write some in series, right? So there's a couple of returning elements throughout the poem that are sort of similar, but I really liked the idea of writing a long poem composed of all these little small ideas or images, and it really felt, I actually can't think of writing prose using this method. I think it would be really hard and frustrating because you'd be like, what order, where, which one, do I number them? Like how would you even do it? So perfect for poetry, and also poetry forever. Poetry
cult. Poetry cult.
So actually, this is another thing that I do at events in person, and I'm going to do it here because I just want to. So what I do is I make everybody repeat poetry forever as a cult slogan. So at the count of 3, everyone is going to type poetry forever. Are we ready?
Oh my gosh, the pressure.
2, 3. Poetry forever! I'm writing it now. See? Oh, look at that. That's awesome.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel so much better. I feel so much better about this, about Zoom launching. I've done a bunch of Zoom launches, but I really wanted this launch to feel like a full room at McNally's. And it does.
That's it?
It does.
Good. Okay. Final chance to heckle, folks. I'm going to shut down the Q&A and hand things back over to Lauren Carter to bring it on home.
Thank you, Tanis. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Natalie. What a lovely, lovely, lovely evening. Where did you guys go? You just
We thought you wanted us to go.
No, come back on. This is the part of the evening where I just say thank you everyone for coming and stay tuned for future events. We have in November, Candace Jane Dorsey will be launching her new book, The Adventures of Isabel, which is a genre shifting, playful, it's been described as a playful and trope-bending mystery series featuring a queer, nameless amateur detective, was star reviewed in Publishers Weekly, so that should be cool. And Ian Williams is also reading later on in the year, so it'll be fantastic. We got some good stuff coming up. Ariel, this was wonderful and lovely. It's always the awkward ending. Everyone will get an email tomorrow with the link to ordering the book and the discount code. So do buy the book. We need to support our indie presses and our writers and our artists. So yeah, those are my final words. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate you coming out. I know there are a zillion Zoom launches, but I really needed this. So thank you.
Yeah.
I can stay here and chat if people want to chat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some people have to go, and that's fair. But you know, some people can hang out.
Yeah.
Matt,
We
where's
aim to please.
your Tree Talk poem, Matt? I want to see it. Where is it?
What? I can't just submit. I have to prep it. I have to have an editor read it.
Get out. Everyone else jumped into the pool.
You have to like gold foil print it on
That's
like,
it.
handmade paper.
That's right. Lauren's got me pegged. That's the truth.
So Matt is not kidding. You see this little thing right here? Matt and I actually had a conversation about what color it should be.
Wow. That's
I know it seems frivolous, but
But it's beautiful. But still, we talked about it.
yeah.
And you know, the longer I look at it, the more important it seems, I have to say.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
What's that thing called, Matt?
Even if you're kidding, Tanis, thank you.
What's that thing called?
I'll never tell.
That
Tell me.
headband.
It's called a headband?
Head and tail band, yeah.
Head and tail
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Who
I have to
printed
say,
them?
the books smell very chemically. They've got that chemical.
That's the that's
That
the
book
sepia toned ink.
Oh, it smells?
Yeah, it smells a little different.
Huh. If
Yeah.
it smelled like leaves, that would be best.
Yeah, I should have asked them if they had a leaf scented ink that they could use. It smelled like detritus.
That's
Yeah.
right.
The forest floor ink.
Yeah. Kim Fauner has a question.
Yeah, I just saw that Kim popped something.
Yeah. Answer that. The hardcover.
Side on a hardcover. It's beautiful.
Yeah, she's still here. Yeah.
Okay, Matt, how did we decide on a hardcover?
Oh, how did we decide on a hardcover?
Mhm.
Well, I think it kind of spawned from the broadsides, because if you remember, the broadsides were done on that bark brown and forest green paper, and I think we wanted to find a way to kind of make that so that it would reflect that in the cover and the interior. So the cover has that forest green, and then the interior has that kind of bark brown sepia toned ink. Yeah, and I think that's why.
I think I bullied you into doing a hardcover, actually.
Yeah.
I had seen Shirley Canyon's book that you did, which
Yes.
was hardcover with a beautiful like Silverstein design to it.
Right.
And I was like, oh. And you approached me to do something, and I was like, well, it has to be hardcover. And luckily, you agreed to that foolishness.
I know.
It's very unusual to see, you know, a hardcover poetry book. I mean, it's not like it never happens, but it's fairly rare, right?
It's all we've been doing in the last little while. Like Dennis Cooley's new book comes out. Well, technically it's out now. We were supposed to launch it live on in person on the 29th.
Oh, that's right.
And of course that got canceled. Well, hopefully postponed, but likely rescheduled. So that's a hardcover. We've got one coming out by Christian McPherson, another hardcover. Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody else here that we did a hardcover for too. And I don't know, it just seems, I find that poetry readers they seem to be like more accepting now than they've ever been of hardcover, because they're more interested in the art of the book. Yeah. Because the words in it are also like, you know, that artistic aspect of, you know, formulating the poems. So I think there's something to it.